Welcome. You are listening to The Deep Dive, where we plunge into the heart of complex information, pulling out the most important nuggets of knowledge and insight. Today, we're embarking on a truly challenging and frankly quite disturbing exploration. This deep dive is a chronicle from inside what our sources starkly refer to as a black site, or sometimes penal psychiatry. It's a chilling term for a place of confinement.
Indeed. And our mission today really is to unpack the experiences documented within these walls. We want to focus particularly on the human stories, the people who emerge from such an environment. As our source material immediately sets the tone, just imagine for a moment the narrator's own words. They say, "Welcome to hell, your social contact for the rest of your life."
Wow, that just hits you immediately.
It really does. That phrase instantly signals the grim reality we're about to explore. We have a compelling collection of personal accounts, legal observations, and some really chilling descriptions of daily life. This is all happening within what our sources identify as Germany's largest correctional facility for mentally ill offenders. They call it the penal psychiatry.
And these sources, they paint a vivid picture, don't they? Deeply unsettling. It's a system that, according to the narrator anyway, functions less like a therapeutic institution and more like a secret prison. That's the term they use. A modern gulag, almost.
Exactly, where individuals are indefinitely detained, stripped of their rights, and allegedly subjected to systematic abuse. That's the core claim. We'll be looking at allegations of physical and psychological measures perceived as torture, and some deeply unsettling stories. They touch upon not only the narrator's own struggles, but also the harrowing experiences of other patients.
Right. So it's a system, but also the individual stories within it.
That's it. Our deep dive today will specifically try to illuminate these chilling personal narratives. Stories of various individuals encountered within this facility. These accounts detail not just their alleged offenses, but also the brutal realities of their confinement. This includes, and we should be clear, some deeply disturbing incidents of sexual aggression and other profound forms of violence.
Okay.
It's a stark look at the human element within such a system. And maybe what happens when the lines between medicine, justice, and control become, not just blurred, but allegedly deliberately manipulated. You'll hear stories today that truly challenge our understanding of institutional care and, frankly, human resilience.
So let's delve deeper into this. Our sources introduce us to this facility, consistently called the Blacksite or penal psychiatry. Officially, it's the Karl Bonhoeffer Nerven Clinic, right? Informally known as Bonnie's Ranch, located in Berlin-Reinickendorf-Wittenau.
That's correct. And it is described as Germany's largest facility for mentally ill offenders. But the narrative, as you said, quickly shifts from a place of treatment to something far more sinister.
So what exactly is this Blacksite, according to the sources? And what about its history? That seems important here.
It really is. The narrator, who is a patient themselves, characterizes this institution as a secret prison, a place where individuals are held indefinitely, often for decades, really, with no clear end in sight. It's portrayed as a system that fundamentally prioritizes incapacitation and suppression over genuine therapy. That's a direct quote.
Incapacitation and suppression, not therapy.
Right. Utilizing what are explicitly described as physical, psychological, and administrative measures that amount to, in the narrator's view, torture and revenge.
Yeah.
And the historical context is crucial. The Karl Bonhoeffer Nerven Clinic is divided. There's a newer part, the Wilhelm Sander House, built in '86, and then there's a much older part, the Altbau, built way back in 1880.
1880.
And the Altbau is particularly highlighted for its, quote, dark history of penal psychiatry. It's even likened to practices seen in the USSR. The narrator points to past atrocities within its walls, routine beatings, torturous ice baths, forced lobotomies that continued until the late 1970s.
Late 70s. Lobotomies. Good grief.
Yeah. And while some of those practices might have stopped, electroshock therapy, for instance, is apparently still present, the narrator emphatically states that patients in this black site exist at the absolute bottom of the social hierarchy, stripped of dignity, stripped of basic human rights.
That historical context certainly adds a chilling layer to the contemporary allegations. And there's this strong accusation that the entire system operates as a political tool. They even call it Stasi 2.0.
Yes, that's a direct reference to the former East German secret police, a very loaded term. The texts allege a systematic process: disenfranchisement, harm, and permanent blackmail, orchestrated against certain individuals, particularly those perceived as political opponents. That's the claim.
So how is this supposed political repression carried out? What specifics do the sources give?
They claim there's no legal protection, a de facto state of outlawry for these individuals, with the explicit goal being to break them, to silence them, The concept of psychiatry as a political fighting tool is stated outright. The aim seems to be exposing what the narrator sees as these complex entanglements between law, psychiatry, and state power offensives, and to highlight the ethical and human rights deficits.
And this isn't just theoretical. The narrator details their own alleged persecution.
Oh, very much so. Not abstract at all. The narrator details enduring over 1,000 lawsuits. 1,000. And roughly 450 defamatory press articles within just 18 months. They claim their property, the Kreuzberg Siedlung, valued at 70 million euro, was illegally auctioned for a tiny fraction, 200,000 euro, citing fake judgments used to acquire it.
70 million down to 200,000, that's quite a discrepancy.
It's staggering. And there are direct accusations against a specific notary in Pirmasens. The narrator calls him a double agent, allegedly complicit in an attempted murder of the narrator's own mother, designed supposedly to prevent the exposure of crucial documents related to all these dealings.
An attempted murder of their mother.
That's the allegation. Furthermore, the narrator's mother was allegedly threatened with decades of illegal imprisonment in a penal psychiatry herself, all, supposedly, to coerce the narrator into legal action regarding something they call the world's succession deed. It's a complex web of accusations.
That level of alleged state misconduct it's hard to comprehend. And within this alleged system, the narrator describes some truly harrowing personal experiences, designed to break someone, it sounds like. What were some of these specific coercive measures they endured inside the Blacksite?
The sources detail numerous forms of alleged torture and abuse. The term coercive measures is used explicitly, classified as an instrument of torture. These aren't just restrictive practices, they're presented as deliberate acts of torment. A prominent example is the 5-point long-term restraint.
Okay, what did that involve?
The narrator describes being completely immobilized, strapped at the feet, the waist with hands fixed to the waist strap and the shoulders. And this is framed not as a brief medical intervention for safety, but as a punishment and torture method, allegedly employed for weeks, maybe even months, far beyond any conceivable medical necessity.
Weeks, months, strapped down like that.
That's the claim. Used punitively for extended periods, almost like a prolonged physical suppression. It's a critical distinction from a necessary medical intervention.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's the medication aspect.
Yes, the profound issue of forced medication. The narrator labels it directly, chemical torture. Initially, they were given Haldol at maximum dose. They describe it as a zombie drug. The side effects sound debilitating. Uncontrolled drooling, deep sedation, constant fatigue, this horrible internal restlessness.
That sounds awful.
Severe hand and arm cramps, intense restless leg syndrome, and significantly impaired cognitive function, making simple things like reading or following a story in a game virtually impossible. Later, they were switched to Risperidol, also at maximum dose, with similar, profoundly debilitating effects.
So the argument is these drugs weren't for healing.
That's precisely the narrator's view. They see them not as healing agents, but as tools. Tools to suppress resistance, to systematically destroy their personality. They allege these drugs induced catatonic states, and that the severe side effects were often downplayed or concealed by staff. From the narrator's perspective, psychologists and the pharmaceutical industry are deeply complicit, profiting from this, with the cynical assertion that madness is not curable and medication just makes patients less active, not less mad.
It's a shocking claim that the very treatment is being weaponized, deliberately used to suppress and control. But the sources say it gets even more insidious. Allegations of covert medication.
Poisoning.
It does. It enters a realm the narrator calls chemical weaponry, described as an especially perfidious method. They allege their food, their water, even the air around them was poisoned, particularly when they tried to self-cater or order food delivery, suggesting a targeted, systematic approach.
Poisoned air. Well, they claim, for instance, soluble coffee was poisoned. It would cause immediate but fleeting alertness, then severe fatigue, forced sleep. A cycle designed to keep them sedated, forcing them to self-administer the poison upon waking just to fight the tiredness. And furthermore, gas was allegedly introduced into their isolation cell.
Gas? What kind of effects?
Extreme fatigue, suicidal thoughts, even sparking violent fantasies of revenge against the staff. This gas, they claim, was controlled by staff, sometimes stopping if a window was open or during visits. The narrator also reports finding a camera in their isolation cell and an alleged microphone in their soundbar, leading them to believe staff were meticulously monitoring their movements to precisely control the delivery of gas or poison.
That level of surveillance and alleged manipulation, it's chilling, aiming to control not just behavior but thought itself. And the alleged physical abuse wasn't just chemical, was it? There's this account of dental torture.
Yes, a truly horrifying account. It stands out. The narrator describes being restrained handcuffs and leg irons during a dental visit, which is apparently in stark contrast to all other patients who were unfettered.
Okay, so they were singled out for restraint. Then what happened?
They alleged that a dentist deliberately drilled a perfectly healthy tooth, drilled it deep, without warning, without anesthesia, causing excruciating pain. And then the tooth was filled with amalgam, with the root allegedly connected directly to the filling, designed, they claim, to cause constant, agonizing pain from any temperature change. This act is explicitly described not as a mistake, not a treatment error, but as pure intent.
Pure intent. That sounds like something out of a nightmare, not a medical facility. And alongside this, there was the prolonged isolation. Dour isolation.
Yes. The narrator spent 5 agonizing months in dour isolation, enduring extreme cold because a window was broken, left open 15 centimeters, and the heating was deliberately turned off. That's the claim. They were kept naked under just a thin smock, forbidden from shaving or cutting their nails, leading to severe physical and psychological neglect. The narrator grimly says it made them look like they came fresh from a concentration camp.
That image is stark.
Isolation, in this context, is consistently described as a strategy of intimidation and control, designed to inflict deep psychological damage, explicitly considered torture. The psychological impact of that kind of prolonged sensory deprivation and physical discomfort, it's almost unimaginable.
So the picture painted is not just about controlling dangerous people. It's about actively breaking them, possibly for political reasons as alleged. A deliberate, systematic effort to destroy a person's will and sanity.
Indeed. And adding another layer to this systemic control is the implementation of forced guardianship, zwangsbetreuung. The narrator states they were placed under guardianship without their knowledge, without their consent. Court documents allegedly sent directly to the guardian, not to them. This is viewed as a calculated means to nullify their autonomy, to legitimize legal actions taken against them, reinforcing this idea of a system designed for permanent control and legal disenfranchisement, not rehabilitation. The source explicitly highlights that the political motives behind such Gutachten expert opinions often remain hidden, underscoring the opaque nature of these decisions.
Okay. Beyond these systemic allegations and the narrator's own harrowing experiences, the sources introduce us to, well, a cast of characters, fellow patients within the penal psychiatry, each with their own, often deeply unsettling, story. Many involve shocking violence, and some, as you mentioned, touch upon very sensitive topics of sexual misconduct. Let's delve into these personal narratives, starting with that direct, harrowing encounter the narrator experienced. It sounds like it illustrates the constant threat of sexual aggression.
Indeed. The directness of these accounts makes them so impactful, so disturbing. Our narrator recounts a deeply personal experience of attempted sexual assault, right there in their own cell. It's a stark reminder of the constant vulnerability inside this penal psychiatry.
And this happened when they were already in a vulnerable state, physically and psychologically?
Precisely. The narrator details how, after about 4 weeks in a room with another patient called Psycho-Arab, though he wasn't the perpetrator of this specific incident, they were asleep, in their bed, afternoon, heavily sedated by psychopharmaceuticals to avoid more threatened restraint. They were already severely weakened, only about 60 kilograms, due to prior homelessness, previous restraints. And they had long hair at the time, which they later felt made them seem more vulnerable, maybe feminine as they put it.
Okay, so they're asleep, sedated, vulnerable. Then what?
They gradually became aware of this disturbing rubbing sound right in front of their face. Upon opening their eyes, they were shocked, saw an erected penis right in front of their face, belonging to a different cellmate who was actively masturbating over them.
Oh my God, that's terrifying. What happened next?
Instinctively, the narrator ducked under the duvet for protection. Immediately, the attacker, described as a colossus, about 195 centimeters tall, 160 kilograms, late 20s, bald head, threw himself onto the duvet. He just stayed on top, suffocating the narrator for 10 excruciating minutes, his pants still down. The narrator called it the longest 10 minutes of my life, desperately trying to figure out how to escape.
10 minutes. Suffocating under him. What do we know about this attacker, the potential rapist, as the narrator calls him? His profile sounds complex.
Very. He was a German-speaking gangster rapper, often expressed virulently homophobic views, which the narrator found confusing, asking, why is it always the homophobes? His history. A former non-ideological street punk, initially forced by friends to steal alcohol, ran away from home in Hamburg before 20, became homeless in Berlin after pawning his dad's laptop, adopted the punk identity mainly for begging, finding shelter in leftist squatter scenes. His deep psychological issues were consistently masked by constant drug and alcohol abuse. He once survived near-lethal 4-per-mil alcohol poisoning only due to extreme tolerance.
So, a history of issues masked by substance abuse. What about his actual criminal history? Was this attempted assault his only act of violence?
Far from it. His initial offense, the one that got him confined, was throwing a stone at a diplomatic vehicle near the Chancellery. Shattered the windshield. Seems minor, but big consequences. But inside the Blacksite, his aggression continued. He once poured boiling water from a kettle over another patient, the pedophile. And more chillingly, the narrator claims he allegedly murdered another pedophile outside the penal psychiatry. Disposed of the body in a deep hole in a scrapyard. A crime apparently not police known.
Murder. Outside the facility.
That's the claim. And the narrator also notes his special interest in adolescents, obvious when he watched TV in the common room. This led the narrator to suspect he was actually a pedophile, despite his radical attacks on other pedophiles. A stark contradiction.
A deeply disturbed, dangerous individual. And the narrator, weakened, was seen as an easy target. What happened after those 10 minutes? How did the narrator cope?
The narrator, feeling profoundly vulnerable, like an easy target, finally managed to shake him off, describing it as a power of desperation, broke through to the door, escaped into the corridor. Crucially, because they saw the staff, police, courts as hostile, untrustworthy. The incident was never reported.
Not reported. Understandable given their perspective, but still.
Exactly. And in a profound act of self-preservation, a desperate move not to be seen as feminine or a potential victim again, the narrator, who'd grown their hair for 8 years, immediately shaved it all off. Radical baldness. They also became hypervigilant, locked their door sleeping, immediately rebuffed any future advances. This incident dramatically reshaped their survival strategies within the Blacksite.
That's a truly horrifying story. Highlights the extreme vulnerability, the lengths you have to go to just to feel safe. But this wasn't the only disturbing sexual or violent encounter the narrator witnessed or experienced, was it? It seems the Blacksite was just teeming with individuals involved in extreme acts, a pervasive threat.
Absolutely. The sources reveal this deeply troubled population. It leads to a grim picture of daily life, daily interactions. The narrator's chronicle is filled with stories highlighting this pervasive danger, the ethical ambiguity. Let's look at some other unsettling encounters, starting with the necrophile and the BDSM stritcher.
The necrophile and the BDSM stritcher, those names alone, they suggest something deeply disturbing, a warped environment.
Indeed. The narrator recounts being lured into a room by a Jewish punk known as the necrophile, supposedly to see a death metal CD. Once inside, the BDSM stritcher, whose picture on the CD cover had Joker-style makeup, suddenly grabbed the narrator, forced them into a doggy-style position on the bed, and demanded hard sex with 3 of us. Shocking.
Good God. Did they manage to escape?
Yes, the narrator fought back fiercely, kicked the necrophile, causing him to fall, and managed to get away. Now, the necrophile's primary crime, as revealed, horrifying. He murdered a friend and repeatedly sexually abused the corpse.
Necrophilia. Inside the facility.
Well, his crime involved necrophilia. Inside, he exhibited other disturbing behavior, habitually urinating next to the toilet, leaving crumpled paper towels in corners, things the narrator was later falsely accused of during their forced medication assessment. This necrophile was also involved in a toilet conspiracy with a fat pedophile who'd spent ages on the toilet without cleaning it. This pedophile later died after jumping from a hotel window, a big loss to no one, according to the narrator's grim account.
It sounds like a constant state of unsettling, dangerous interactions. What about the pedo sugar daddy and the toy boy? That suggests another disturbing dynamic, maybe even a failure of oversight.
A very complex, deeply disturbing dynamic, yes. The pedo sugar daddy, nearly 50, financially supported a much younger toy boy. Their relationship was overtly inseparable, drew staff attention inside the penal psychiatry. The toy boy eventually confessed the relationship to a psychologist. Ironically, this led to his transfer to a mixed ward, where the narrator's mother was.
Okay, but what about the sugar daddy?
This is critical. He later got outside release privileges, and for 2 undisturbed years, he traveled from Berlin to Cottbus on a motorcycle, repeatedly raping a 13-year-old girl he'd cyber-groomed on social media. He lied about his age, claimed to be about your age.
He got release privileges and did that for 2 years, undisturbed.
That's the chilling claim. The abuse included brutal physical violence, kicking her groin, biting his penis during oral sex, cutting her leg with a razor blade. He filmed and photographed it all on his phone, where child pornography was also found. Yet, he denied pedophilia. Claimed she looked older, that it was a relationship. The victim called it rape. The sources mentioned perceived complicity from the victim for staying in contact, but also note she was pressured with the video's photos.
That's incredibly disturbing. It raises serious questions about the assessment protocols, the oversight, especially for external release. What happened to the toy boy in all this? His connection seems grim.
His story continued intertwining with the facility's chaos, highlighting the desperate, illicit economies inside. He later got into a heterosexual relationship with a nearly 50-year-old widow, the BDSM stripper's ex-wife, actually, planned to marry her. But he still continued having sex with the pedo sugar daddy for money. And he also sold sexual services to another patient, the one crudely called the permanently horny gay cannibal, just for tobacco money. He even smuggled a phone in, started a virtual relationship, but got hacked, blackmailed. Just another layer of exploitation.
A web of desperation and exploitation. Shifting to overt violence, what about the werewolf, a triple killer?
The werewolf had killed 2 friends. With his fists, other objects, scissors, bottles, destroyed the apartment, had partial amnesia for it. Described as a brawler his whole life, interested in combat arts. Paradoxically, showed remorse, said he'd like to swap places with his victims, but despite heavy medication, 15 years of therapy inside. His violence remained. He violently beat the querulent neighbor, seemingly without provocation, only stopped by staff who thought he'd kill him. And the narrator grimly thanked the werewolf with chocolate and a poster for this. Shows the twisted internal justice system.
Thanked him for the assault. Wow. And the voodoo killer sounds like a case driven by unusual delusions.
Indeed. Tragic. An African patient, deeply distressed about voodoo magic affecting his family back home, sought help from a German Christian pastor. When the pastor refused an anti-voodoo prayer, the patient freaked out. In what the sources call a voodoo delusion violence excess, he killed the pastor, completely destroyed his apartment. The source grimly notes with dark irony that the voodoo magic from Africa showed its real effect in distant Berlin after all. Simply magical.
It's just tragic. Moving on. Assadin, the pretty boy's murder plot. What was his elaborate, bizarre plan?
Assadin, the narrator, focuses on his looks, calling him a pretty boy, planned to murder his Iranian ex-wife, then flee to Saudi Arabia, believing he could escape punishment under Islamic law, seeing her as his property, his underlying motive, even grander, more delusional. He thought this act would trigger a revolution in Iran, overthrow the mullah regime.
A revolution triggered by murdering his ex-wife.
Exactly. An implausible plan, fueled by chronic microdosing of LSD obtained from an art professor. The narrator even gives LSD advice here. Good mood, positive people, nature, music, avoid police. Assadin's background adds layers. Marriage of convenience for his ex-wife's passport, polyamorous lifestyle, public group sex orgies on LSD, belief his landlord used bribery. A complex picture.
Another mind seemingly unmoored from reality. And the suicide junkie. His crime and fate sound particularly grim. Hopelessness.
Deeply grim. The suicide junkie killed his father with a samurai sword, decapitated him, transported the head across Berlin, on the subway, in a plastic bag, before disposing of it in a river.
Oh, God.
After 20 long years in the penal psychiatry, no prospect of release, consumed by despair, he died in his cell. Heroin overdose. A tragic end.
Just awful. And the Khedive bag bomb builder, a mix of intelligence and detachment.
Yes, an autistic auto mechanic interested in physics, math, sharp mind, apparently lacking empathy. Meticulously built a bomb, placed it in a Khedive chopping bag at a park. It exploded when a homeless person tried to inspect it. Severely injured, blinded them. He got caught because, well, he made a critical error, ordered the detonator parts online, under his own name. The narrator calls it a gross error, surprising for his technical skill.
A chilling lack of foresight or maybe understanding of consequences. How about the fisting victim, arson and self-harm?
This patient was diagnosed with sadomasochism, deriving pleasure from pain, humiliation, bondage. He attempted arson inside the facility, put tangles on a stove, poured oil, left the kitchen. Later showed the narrator press articles about a fire at his old apartment, proudly posing with sexy men in fire uniforms in a photo, strongly implying he set that one too. A pattern of destructive behavior.
A pattern, yes. And Rain, the Polish double-time gangster rapper, escape, return, brutal consequences.
Rain and another Polish patient wrote and sang German gangster rap, double time, the narrator jokes, meaning double shitty quality. Delusional dreams of a big career. Rain attempted a daring escape during a supervised bike tour, fell behind, cycled straight when the group turned. Clever use of distraction. Slept homeless in a park, lost his shoe to a fox. Highlights the harsh reality outside. Voluntarily returned after 10 days. Drug use, ran out of money, lost 15 kilograms.
So the escape didn't last long. Then what?
A brutal incident followed. He'd borrowed 300 euros from an older Turkish patient, didn't repay it. So the Turk paid a large Arab man described with the swastika tattoo another 300 euros to severely beat Rain. Head injuries so bad he needed bandages for weeks. Brutal internal debt collection.
Just one harrowing tale after another. Extreme dysfunction, desperation. What about Mr. 75%, the Quasimodo? His story sounds unique. Longing for freedom.
Mr. 75%, a 75-year-old hunchbacked East German, loud critic of the penal psychiatry, constantly comparing it to the DDR. Financially well off despite being inside. Used it to buy illegal porn on USBs and inflated prices 500 euros for 20 euros worth. And other forbidden stuff. Incredibly gullible in his desperation for freedom. Paid 3,000 euros to a scammer for a fake escape plan involving a guerrilla commando with machine guns.
Yeah.
Later paid 500 euros for a 100-euro black market phone. Extreme gullibility fueled by yearning for liberation.
That's heartbreaking, really. Paying for fake hope.
It is. He even self-harmed badly. Jumped from the second floor of a courthouse during an escape attempt, broke both femurs, ended up permanently in a wheelchair on a disabled ward, had "sick of it all" tattooed on his face, a stark declaration. Despite claiming not to be gay, often using faggot as an insult, he was seen having homosexual sex with other patients, aggressively called staff Stasi and Nazi thugs, used ceramic plates as lightning-fast attacks out of nowhere against patients and staff, surprising accuracy for his age.
Chaos, desperation leading to self-harm and violence. And the querulant, the litigious neighbor. His interaction sounds strained. Another form of dysfunction.
The querulant, described as a real nightmare by the narrator and others, had querulantische Störung, like a process addiction, delusional persistence on perceived rights, arrogance, constantly incited others to file lawsuits, criminal complaints, used abstruse legal theories. His lawyer also, his ex-wife's new lover, allegedly exploited his dementia, his delusion, charged exorbitant fees for endless failed lawsuits, took almost all his substantial income. The narrator calls it abuse of the mentally disabled, external exploitation linked to the system.
Exploited by his own lawyer.
And he was the victim of the werewolf's unprovoked assault, which, tellingly, the narrator and others saw as a heroic deed, felt it hit the right one. Shows the complex dynamics, the warped morality inside.
Truly warped. Then there's the Indian fan, a walking biohazard, shocking lack of hygiene, posing a threat.
Yes, appalling. Speaks to a profound lack of oversight, basic sanitation. The Indian fan had an artificial anus, constant foul odor mixed with stomach acid, cleaned it in the shared room leaving 30-centimeter bloodstains, reused bloody tissues, didn't wash his hands, touched everything with infected fingers. A plague, the narrator called him.
That's incredibly disturbing for anyone sharing a space.
He explicitly threatened the narrator, infecting them with hepatitis, AIDS blood, killing them in their sleep. Even concocted a bizarre plan to get discharged for unacceptable hygienic conditions by deliberately messing up the room, smearing feces on walls, and complaining. The narrator caught him doing it. He also refused to shower, citing a fatal risk if his artificial anus got inflamed. Dangerous, difficult conditions.
Appalling. What about the 4 blocks bouncer, smuggling using his size?
Yes. Extremely obese African man, over 180 kilograms, exploited his size to smuggle cell phones in, traded them, capitalized on demand. The narrator occasionally borrowed a phone from him, shows the underground networks, fell into a 4-month coma from severe pneumonia, remarkably, didn't lose weight. Formerly a bodybuilder, appeared as a bouncer in the German TV series 4 Blocks, adds a surreal celebrity connection.
A surreal footnote. And the cannibal. Just a brief, chilling reference.
Yes, mainly referred to as the permanently horny gay cannibal, the one the toy boy sold sexual services to for tobacco money. No more specific details on his crimes or behavior, just that unsettling moniker and transactional relationship. Leaves much to the imagination.
Indeed. And the smirked one, indifference to surroundings, safety.
The smoked one. Cellmate who used a tall tobacco tin as an ashtray and reservoir for butts he'd re-roll. The refuse often caused small smoldering fires, smoke smelling of burnt plastic, filters, constant low-level threat. He consistently refused to extinguish them, despite requests from the narrator and the potential rapist. In one bizarre incident, the potential rapist dumped the burning ashes into the smoked one's coffee, which the smoker then drank without noticing. Shows extreme detachment.
Drink coffee with ashes in it? Wow. Finally, the crazy right-wing radicals. How did the narrator view them?
The narrator finds their presence profoundly illogical. Pathetic, really, especially given the historical context. Nazis systematically euthanizing the mentally ill in the 30s, notes the grim irony. Many Hitler supporters were likely among those gassed, despite ideology. views it as pathetic that these patients, bottom of the hierarchy, still consider themselves master race, a desperate, deluded attempt to feel superior in utter powerlessness.
The sheer number, the extremity of these accounts, it's staggering. Each snapshot of trauma, violence, suffering, it really underscores the profound dysfunction, the terrifying environment described within this black site. What does it all mean when we connect it back to the system itself?
That raises an incredibly unsettling question, doesn't it? In a place with such extreme behaviors, where the system itself is accused of psychological decomposition, chemical warfare.
Yeah.
How do you even define madness or sanity? The narrator's perspective fundamentally challenges the very foundation of traditional psychiatry, at least within this specific alleged context of state repression and human rights issues.
Right. The narrator is highly critical of psychology itself, calls it a sham science. What are their arguments? What does this imply about healing?
They state unequivocally, no insane person has ever been cured by words. Dismisses psychology as a sham science, failing its promise of healing through psychotherapy. Goes after Freud calls him obviously insane, points to alleged cocaine wine treatments, sexualizing everything, the grandiose thesis that talking cures madness, views psychologists as completely useless and powerless, just expensive state-sanctioned people to talk to like a friend or pastor. Actual liberation from madness definitely excluded. Accuses the profession of being well-connected, making big business, having a strong lobby, public acceptance, stemming from ignorance, a desire not to feel powerless against mental illness.
And they use examples from inside the black site to support this scathing view.
Precisely. Points to numerous patients confined for decades, 20, 30, 40 years, receiving the full dose of every therapy, every medication imaginable. Individual, group, occupational therapy, psychoeducation, pharmacology, the works. Yet despite all this, these individuals, in a narrator's observation, remain completely insane. They conclude, all treatments are completely ineffective, totally superfluous, just tormenting patients with meds, side effects, unpleasant, stupid conversations. Claims, cynically, that psychologists privately admit madness is incurable, but the circus continues for profit. Sustained by the lobby, public ignorance, it's a devastating indictment.
It sounds like a system designed not for recovery, but for permanent control, where sanity and illness definitions get twisted to maintain power, indefinite confinement. Which brings us back to the legal framework, the 63-year designation, and the narrator's overarching conspiracy theory.
Indeed. This indefinite detention is anchored legally by paragraph 63 of the German Penal Code, the 63-year designation. Placement under this paragraph means indefinite detention, potentially forever. Average stay, a staggering 8 years. Even for minor offenses, the narrator gives that example, 42 years for stealing 2 vodka bottles. Released only to hospice to die.
42 years for 2 bottles.
Release hinges entirely on therapists and external experts' prognosis on future criminality, creating this deeply problematic dynamic where patients feel forced to lie, tell therapists what they want to hear just for a flicker of hope. A cycle of deception, not healing. Even leave often means transfer to an external penal psychiatry outpost, a controlled group home, strict rules, monitoring, de facto re-imprisonment. Sources also claim savings are confiscated if too high, making preparation for life after impossible.
A profound legal and psychological trap. Even freedom is tightly controlled. This cynical view then leads to the narrator's big conspiracy theory, explaining their own predicament.
Precisely. Frames all their experiences as part of a grand Secret Service plan, a sweeping divide-and-conquer strategy aiming for a New World Order, NWO, emanating, they believe, from Germany. Convinced their own persecution, the alleged poisoning, forced meds is designed specifically to provoke them. Provoke a violent act to justify indefinite incarceration as a dangerous madman, serving the deep state's agenda.
So even the poisoning fantasies aren't delusion in their view, but a forced expression of reality the system wants to use against them.
Exactly. Profoundly believes they're being forced to express these things so staff can record them. Legitimize continued detention, forced medication. Claims they had to speak out about the gas poisoning due to its intensity, despite knowing it'd be used against them. Their own provoked act of violence, stabbing the chief physician in the neck, was, in their view, intentionally orchestrated by the deep state to label them a community dangerous madman.
Stab the chief physician.
Yes. Sees themselves as an unwitting pawn in a global, legal, political battle over the world's succession deed. This complex conspiratorial treaty allegedly selling native states to them, Germany and allies wanting world domination through it. Even claims being put on a list for Reich citizens and self-governors for daring to claim this deed.
That's an immense claim, a global conspiracy centered on their persecution. Given this belief, how do they respond? How do they navigate a system they see as hostile?
With absolute, unwavering refusal to cooperate. That's the response. Explicitly refused all therapy, all forensic assessments. Believed it just gave enemies info to harm them more. Instead, channeled energy into documenting everything. Painstakingly wrote their autobiography on an Xbox, using just a controller, described as arduous, time-consuming, but necessary to capture every dirty detail.
Documenting everything on an Xbox controller, that's dedication born of desperation.
It is. And they display the sharp, cynical wit about therapy, mocks therapists with golden words to cure madness, cites absurd advice given, make pig noises, wear an imaginary protective cloak, adds gallows humor to the grim reality of perceived manipulation.
And this manipulation extends to the physical environment, staff actions?
Yes, absolutely. Describes being intentionally subjected to freezing conditions, forced nudity in iso-smocks, constant exposure to gas, poisoned food water, all aimed at breaking them. Convinced staff were bribed, manipulated by the deep state to act against them. This perceived systematic abuse, plus the crushing reality of indefinite detention under 63-year, leads to a complete breakdown of trust, permeates every interaction, fuels deep paranoia about poison, cameras, manipulation, leads to their ultimate refusal to engage with a system they believe wants to destroy them.
So reflecting on this deep dive has taken us into an incredibly dark, disturbing reality, as chronicled by our sources. Systematic allegations of torture, abuse, forced medication, isolation, harrowing personal stories of violence, sexual attrition inside this black site. It's a stark portrayal of vulnerability, alleged corruption, profound human suffering, in a system supposedly meant to treat and protect.
Indeed, the sources present this relentless narrative. A protagonist fighting a perceived deep state operation, alleging the very institutions meant for care are used as instruments of control, repression. The detailed accounts, the potential rapist, necrophile, Beto sugar daddy, others serve as chilling examples of the complex, dangerous, disturbing environment described. Accusations of poisoned food, gas attacks, dental torture paint a picture of deliberate psychological, physical torment, forcing us to confront extreme possibilities of institutional power.
It's a story that challenges our fundamental understanding of justice, mental health care, the boundaries of state power. The call to spread the truth from the sources is clear, urging us to look beyond conventional narratives. We're left pondering the nature of reality itself within such confines, how perception can be profoundly shaped by extreme circumstances, alleged systemic abuse.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it raises that important, unsettling question. When institutions designed for care are accused of becoming instruments of political suppression, personal destruction, what does that say about our societal structures? What profound responsibility do we bear in scrutinizing them? Even when the narratives are as challenging, as controversial as these, the truth, however difficult they argue, must get out before it's too late.
A truly heavy thought to end on, but one that demands consideration. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this exploration gives you a deeper, more nuanced understanding of the profound, often hidden challenges within systems of confinement, and the critical importance of questioning what lies beneath the surface.
We encourage you to reflect on these narratives. Consider the far-reaching implications of such power dynamics. Until next time.